Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Your Stars Align. This is Carmina, astrologer and card reader. And today I have with me Levi Cosijn, who's also a Vedic astrologer. Hi Levi.
Hi Carmina, how are you?
Good, it's nice to see you again. So,
Me too.
Thanks. So Levi and I taught some classes together in the past, some classes on relationships and Lashitadia Vashtas and careers was the most recent ones. You can check out my website, yourstars.align.com, under courses to see the recordings of our previous classes. So today we were thinking to show an example of a chart of a person who is financially doing very well, who's wealthy. And this will be like a preview to our next class, our next astrological workshop that we're going to be presenting this Sunday at 6 p.m. Central European Time. And it's going to be a class all about wealth and financial strength. And so in this video, we're just going to show what applies to this particular chart. And in the class, we're going to go even more deep and more thorough to, enumerate and list all the yogas and all the factors and all that. Yeah. Is that the...
Yeah. Sounds good. Sounds good. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if you want to
share... you want me to share, yeah, I will share my screen here. You can you see the chart all right?
Yes, it's very clear.
Okay, good. Just 1 second. Okay, so we're looking at the chart of a quite wealthy person. This is not a billionaire person. This is a multi-millionaire, right? So we can go over what we can go over some yogas. We can go over some Jaimini stuff, and also look at the Hora chart and the Chaturthamsa chart, right? So first of all, we can see that this individual has an Atmakaraka Jupiter. So his south planet is Jupiter, and it's conjunct the second house. It's in the second house. It's an Artha house. And you also see that's exalted.
Yes.
It's also conjunct the sun, right, which is another self factor. So it's like a double signification. So it indicates someone who's firm on the path. In this case, it's going to be, second house Artha stuff.
So although the sun is normally a separating factor, in this case, it's not really...
It's going to create more consistency. The sun is really hot. Yes, it's going to always separate from, the place it aspects or it conjuncts. But the sun here is in a really good dignity. If you look at the dignity here, we see the sun is in a great friend sign. And so it's always going to indicate some consistency, especially in the long run. A well-dignified sun is able to do that. It's considered a noble separator, which is, it's going to separate a person because they're focused on other things. The path leads them somewhere else. But in the long run, especially a well-dignified sun will create consistency. In this case, in respect to second house affairs, which is obviously important, right? In terms of creating a small empire, we could say, which is the case for this individual. And also the sun is the third lord, which is the second from the second, which has a wealth connotation as well.
And also Jupiter by itself is a manifester, right? And the Lord, the moon, is also manifesting by aspect. So it's pretty manifested, that Artha house.
It's very manifested from the Rashi only. Also, the second lord is ruled by, is the moon. It's exalted, and it's a Rashi aspect. It manifests Jupiter, which is also the seventh lord of trade and the 11th lord of gains, and also the second from the second, the sun. So we have this very powerful combination here, which indicates that this person has you know, from the Rashi chart, considered great potential for gaining wealth or becoming wealthy. Now we can just look at the Hora chart like quickly, and we see that Jupiter.
Maybe we should mention that the Hora chart is like the financial responsibilities, right?
Yes, it indicates your capacity or your capability to be resourceful. Okay, so it's the important, or the karaka for the Hora chart is the moon, and the moon is of course the planet of being resourceful. The moon adapts, evolves in respect to your circumstance also. Okay, so it's going to be important in terms of creating wealth, like finding ways to bring it to you. Okay, so becoming resourceful. The D4 chart, the Chaturthamsa chart, which is indicated here by the D4, deals more with our fortune. Getting our fair share is what Ernst Wilhelm calls it. Getting your fair share in the world. And this is more considered from the D4 chart. But before we get there, we need to be resourceful. Right? We need to, make money. And, it's going to be depending on if you're born in a rich family, for example. It can indicate, a good Chaturthamsa chart, for example. And if the Hora chart would be in less of a good shape, then it would indicate that the person is more relying on, the family's wealth and this kind of thing, but on themselves, maybe they have a harder time to be resourceful, we could say. See, so you have to look at in the context the individual is. You see, but the moon is the karaka for the D4, the D2 chart, the Hora chart, which is all about evolving, adapting, and becoming resourceful or being resourceful. And the D4 chart is ruled, or the karaka for wealth is Mercury, right? And moon and Mercury are, excuse me?
The son of the moon.
The son of the moon. It's also, they're genetically exactly related. So a good moon is of course always able to adapt and attract and be resourceful. And a good Mercury is always keen to learn and to investigate. So if both planets are doing well on the chart, it indicates more capacity, more capability to attract, to be resourceful and to attract wealth in life, right? So, I mean, the Hora chart in this individual's horoscope, it kind of the pattern repeats. The Atmakaraka, which is Jupiter, is also conjunct the second house cusp. It is debilitated, but we're not going to consider that right now. It means that the self factor is also in the Hora chart is in the in the second house.
Yes.
Also the second lord. I mean, it's debilitated, but it has a good Nichabanga yoga because the lord of Jupiter is in an angle. It's on the ascendant also. And so Saturn is also rules the second house cusp on the ascendant. So Saturn on the ascendant in any Varga chart is going to create some difficulties, but at the same time, it indicates that the person is really strongly focused on second house matters because it rules the second house cusp here in the ascendant, and it's also manifested by this great Mercury here.
And also there's an interchange between the first and second lord, which is a Maha Yoga, like a yoga for success.
So yeah, and it kind of also, if we look at, we pulled up here the Tara Arkamsha, which I recently came across on Ernst's website, which is very great technique to consider wealth or to examine wealth. We also see that the first dash is ruled by Saturn. All right. Okay, I think I have to change the settings here. No, it has Capricorn. No, it's fine. It's Capricorn and it has a debilitated planet in it. So this makes one a Srimantaha, so a wealthy, glorious person on that account.
So a debilitated planet can also make you a Srimantaha in certain conditions.
Yes, and also it was in 1984 that the kind of, I think the breakthrough was there. I just have to check this. 1984. He was running Leo. It was the beginning of 1984. He was running Leo Capricorn. And so Capricorn has this debilitated planet, so this is going to boost wealth for him. It's also
And
conjunct
it's
the second
also
house there.
Jupiter. Yeah, Jupiter is important for gains, right? It's a factor in the Tarar-Kamsha.
It is the Karaka, yes, for the Tarar-Kamsha. Yes, and then also the 9th and the 11th from Jupiter, and then you can also look at the Padas and this kind of thing. But we won't take it that far here, but it's indicated that in the beginning of 84, he sold his first property in the beginning of Leo Dasha in 1997. And then in Leo Capricorn, it just, it took off. It really took off. Also a lot of foreign relations, which is also indicated in a Rashi chart here because it's all happening in the sign of Cancer. So there's a lot of things happening financially speaking.
It's interesting because, you know, the Matru Karaka is related to real estate, and that's Saturn for him. And
Yes.
it happened in Capricorn, you know.
Leo Capricorn.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, so it works out. Also, if you look at the dashas, he was in the beginning of 1997, was the end of Moon Sun into the Mars dasha. This is all about real estate.
In
So
79.
Mars, yes, 79, you see. So it was the beginning of Mars dasha. It's just lines up really nice. And then in, I think 84, he was running. It was, I think, the end of Mars Ketu, the end of Mars Ketu, and Ketu, of course, also has a real estate connotations, right?
Yes.
And then Mars is really strong here in its own sign in the Rashi chart, and so on. So it plays out very well for this person. Now, if we look at some yogas, I'm not going to go over all the yogas here, but there's because we're going to, you know, we're going to go deeper into this during the class, but there are some important yogas, of course. Here you also see that the 9th, the 1st and the 4th Lord Mercury. First of all, Mercury is really strong. The ascendant Lord is really strong because it's in its own house. It's in an adult state and it's fully awake. Okay, so that's like a perfect Mercury here.
Even though it's also a bit starved by Saturn.
It is a little bit starved by Saturn because Saturn starves any planet conjunct, of course. But at the same time, it's also the 9th Lord. So it's creating this very powerful Raja Yoga in the 1st house. And of course, Mercury is also relating to trade and to be able to, you know, it's the business man, right?
Yes.
So that's important. Also, if you look at the yoga.
And it helps Saturn focus because in return it delights Saturn. So.
And it delights Saturn for sure.
Which is
also
the real estate. So the real estate is delighted.
Yes. Also, if you look at the yogas, yoga judgment screen, see, it's very clear that the power of this horoscope is also, if you look at the you know, the yoga strength, the strength of the planets. This is, you know, considering Ishtakashta like a strength, which is a different kind of strength, right? Which is also given in Parashara, Hora Shastra. You see, look at all these, the yoga, the strength of the yogas here. You know, it's every planet but Saturn has like these great positive yoga strength. See, like Mercury, his ascendant Lord, has 10.8 against 0.7. Right, Jupiter is 12.3 against 3.7, and so on. It's like all positive. It's rather really exceptional, I think.
Such a horoscope, really, because usually you have more negatives than positives. So this is like really rare to see.
It's rare. Yeah. Also, yes, exactly. And also, he's going to retire in like around 2020 or something because he's already in his 70s. And look at it, that's going to be in Saturn Dasha, which, you know, has which is the weakest planet in this configuration, we could say. Also, if you look at the Lajitadi Avastas, just look at it. It's just, you know, Moon, Mars, and Sun are just perfect. You know, and then if you look at, you know, Saturn's Avastas are quite decent as well. You know, it's not. So then he has. Excuse me?
They're very decent. Only like 160 bad and like 565 goods. I think that's really nice.
That's really nice. Like, there's nothing wrong with this these avastas. Of course, he has been going through some rough times, and this is one of the indicators is, of course, Rahu and Saturn, which are always the troublemakers in the horoscope. You can see that Rahu, even though it gives a lot of, Saturn as the 9th lord, it's also the 8th lord, right? So,
and it's
conjunct, and it's combust, and it's with the ascendant on the ascendant. So also you see like Venus is, pretty heavily starved also.
And it's also in the 12th from his Atma Karaka, so Venus, Rahu, expense from the government and from Venusian affairs.
Venusian affairs, exactly. So that's like the biggest stain we could say in a horoscope is like Venus. See?
Yeah, I see the Avashtas. The Venus Avashtas are the most negative, I think.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yes.
But overall, really Avashtas, like really.
Like really, it's rather exceptional, right? If you don't come across so many good avastas, right?
Yes.
In this,
only one bad planet, I'll take it.
it's quite good. So also, if you look at the overall dignity, he has like these 2 exalted planets.
It's really good.
There's only 2 in neutral dignity. So if you look at the yogas, if you look at also the core yogas, which are like the inspirational, the things that give wealth, right? The combination that give wealth. This is like a stainless Raja yoga, right? Mm-hmm. This is the 9th lord with the 4th and the 1st lord in the 1st house. And then look at the dignity of these planets. I mean, Saturn is neutral, but throughout the Vargas, it's doing quite well, It's exalted in the D7 and the D3 and so on. It overall has a good dignity. And so on. So
I see Mars is like a yoga breaker for him, right?
Yes.
So
it's the 11th lord, but it's also a Viparit yoga. It's also, the 11th lord in its own sign, in its own house, strong. So it's going to create some, even though it's reversed yoga, so it's going to create some success as well.
But also like his passion, maybe breaking some other things. Mars in Aries.
He's definitely a very passionate guy. You see also Venus and Mars are Rashi aspecting each other. Mm-hmm. And you see that Venus is with Rahu. So there's a lot of juice, running. And there's also a lot of passion into things. And this is also being put in the whole business. So it's a very passionate individual. So able to, pour its passion into whatever he focuses on, we could say. See, so so he's been writing. Yes.
Maybe we can also check the 11th from his Atma Karaka, because we looked at the 12th. Maybe we can look at
the 11th from the in the Rashi, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's this one. Yeah, it's like Virgo. Virgo has Mercury aspecting and also Saturn. This is a pattern that it's a. Mm-hmm.
Jaimini says, like, if benefics aspect the 11th, like wealth from like legal ways, and if malefics aspect is like not so legal, right? Is this true in this case of this person?
Of course, Mercury is going to relate to business.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, of course, it's going to be important. This person has never had any big problems with government or litigation stuff, never. So it's always been going really well. But I think, Mercury as the aspect in the 11th there is going to create, gains in finances and business. Saturn could indicate, I think because you mentioned also it relates to the Matrukarka. Now I use these more in respect to like people.
Me too.
Because I would consider Mars as the Karaka, of course, for real estate, but it's it would create some I think some gains in respect to like because Saturn rules like maybe sick people or poor people or this kind of thing, or dead things, or it could indicate that. It's not really playing out and with what I know from him, but yeah, it would indicate some trouble as well. This individual has you know, the whole buildup of the business, it didn't come in one day. You know, he started the business late 30s, and then he had to build it up. So it was not like starting a business and then 2 years later you know, being wildly rich or something. It hasn't played out like that. It was a build-up, gradual build-up of business. But then in 84 there was like this breakthrough. He had a big deal with a German company and so on. So, and then if you look at the dashas, the Rahu dasha and then the Jupiter dasha, it only increased and increased and increased, and until it became like an empire. Okay,
Rahu's lord is well dignified, right? It's the sun and it's with Jupiter, so. And
Rashi aspected by an exalted moon, and so on. So yeah, it's pretty strong. So maybe we could go over some yogas. I mean,
yeah, let's look at some of the wealth yogas that apply to this chart.
Yeah, so the important ones are, of course, the Anapa and Sunapa yogas, and you know, when these two are there, it's going to create Durudara yoga, which is important in terms of wealth, because of course we mentioned that the moon is all about you know, it's the planet that makes things grow, right? So and also it relates to resourcefulness and wealth. So any planet except Sun, Rahu, and Ketu in the 2nd or 12th. I mean, Anapa yoga is any planet except Sun, Rahu, or Ketu in the 12th from the moon. He's going to create that yoga. So in his case, it's going to be Mars in its own sign. And so it's going to show, because the moon has already passed this Mars here. So on some level, it's going to reflect or be reflected in the person. You're going to feel a strong Martian quality. It's like something that he integrated on some level. And also if you meet him, you'll feel it, like a strong Martian quality, logic, strategic, bold, you know, and really pushing through. And so it's going to be important in terms of implementing whatever you want, okay, in terms of business, and here in terms of gaining wealth, becoming resourceful. So Mars is going to be important. And then the Sunapa yoga is any planet except Sun, Rahu, or Ketu in the 2nd from the moon, and that is Mercury, of course, the planet of business and, you know, being able to communicate really well. Saturn is a hard worker, of course, enduring, can create some setbacks at the same time, but these planets are going to be important, and it's on some level, I mean, these planets help them like quite a lot. And so when these two yogas are present, the Anapa and Sunapa yoga, it is called Durudara yoga. And so this is a strong yoga for the moon. Okay, so, and it's going to be important because it's going to give the person a greater capacity to be resourceful. And so it means also if these if one of these yogas is there, we don't have to consider too much Kema Druma yogas, which can, you know, ruin the horoscope. So we don't have to go over this. I think also the Lagna Lord and the 9th Lord in angles from each other, which is also relating to this Raja yoga here, is important, and it's a core yoga, Kahala yoga.
Children are also very supportive, because I see the Putra Karaka is Saturn, and like Saturn helps him a lot, right?
Definitely. And also it's the 4th, you know, the 5th cusp lord. Mercury is also on the ascendant, good dignity. So yeah, he has a really good connection with his kids. He has 2 daughters. They're not really into the business. I mean, they're growing into it because this individual has like a dozen of companies, right? So it's very complex structure, and so his children are learning to kind of also deal with that. But yes, his children are very important to him, and also like even great advisors.
Interesting.
Okay. So there's a bunch of other yogas we can go over. I just give me 1 second. I have to.
Also, I was curious, like for wealth, do you look in the Navamsha as well?
Well, I would look at the Navamsha anyway. Like I would look at Shashtyamsha, Navamsha. Also, you can look at like Kavedamsha, Akshavedamsha in terms of the dashas and how strong the person is anchored on a path. For example, how auspicious the dasha is going to be and this kind of thing. So we definitely don't exclude any Vargas, but specifically I would look at the Hora chart, the Rashi chart, the Hora, and the Chaturthamsa chart, like the D4 chart. I would also definitely look at the D60 chart, but I'm not really sure about the birth time, like exactly. I'm busy. I'm doing a rectification on this horoscope, but I'm not done. So I'm using this time for now, because it's highly unlikely that it was exactly 5 a.m. But I would definitely look at the Navamsha chart in general, like how we could just pull up the Navamsha as well. What's happening with the Navamsha? So
yes, Saturn with Jupiter, so another Saturn present with self factors everywhere.
Yeah, so he also had to go through some stuff, which is also.
But Saturn with the 10th cusp is good for accomplished deeds, so.
Definitely, yes. He's a hard worker and he's super passionate. It's in his Makaraka is also in the sign of Pisces. And so what's happening here in the Mars Dasha? So it's Venus.
In Libra of trade.
And what's happening here? Just going to look at the D10 chart here. Because we're focusing on wealth, right? I didn't really check these things thoroughly. But Mars is here in Scorpio, also during that time. And also, you see the exalted. Let's maybe we should focus on the Hora and the D4 chart more. It's more relevant here. Okay. Let's look at the Hora chart. There's also some other, there's a bunch of other yogas playing out, which we should probably not go into deeply here, right? But for example, he has the what is it? There's like what we call the Vasumathi or the rich yogas, right? Which is going to show how the time span, like the time period a person will need to optimize their wealth, we could say. So they start a business. If they make profits, in 2 years, it's going to be like this yoga is definitely going to play out. Like this is when all 3 benefics are in the upachayas from the moon or the ascendant. Right? The upachayas are 3, 6, 10, and 11. So when all 3 benefics are there, which is not happening in his horoscope. But then also if there's 2 benefics, it's going to take a little more time, like maybe 5 years or something. And when there's 1 benefic in upachayas from the ascendant or the moon, then the individual need more time to optimize their wealth, we can say, or to maximize their wealth. Okay. So here you see, for example, that from the moon, Jupiter is a benefic. There's this 1 benefic. So Mercury is in the 2nd, which is not an upachaya. Venus is in the 4th, which is also neither an upachaya. So there's no 3 benefics in these placements. So it's also not happening from the ascendant. Okay, and then from 2 benefics, it's not really happening. So there's 1 benefic in the 3rd, which is an upachaya from the moon, and also 1 benefic in the 3rd from the ascendant. So this person needed a lot of time to optimize or maximize their wealth. See?
Yeah, Because upachayas are houses that grow over time, like, right?
Exactly. And the moon, of course, is the planet that makes things grow, right?
And it's
So
waning.
and it's waning, yes. Also here, if you see like the Chandra moon yoga,
Yes.
it's like, what is it? The 10th Lord in an angle trine or second from the moon, right? So we can see it here. If we look at the 10th cusp, it's Saturn. Saturn is on in the Lagna. It's also in the second from the moon. So he would have that. And also, there's some other yogas like the moon's relationship to the sun, for example, which are important yogas. And I think he has the Sama or the mediocre yoga there. So this is when the moon is in a Panafara, you know, which means the 2nd, 5th, 8th, or 12th, 11th from the sun. And his moon is in this 11th from the sun, which means like a mediocre yoga. So it's good. There's best yoga, mediocre yoga, and worst yoga. The best yoga is when the moon is in an apoklima, which means 3rd, 6th, 9th, or 12th from the sun, right? And then also there's mediocre, which is the moon in a Panapara house, so meaning 2, 5, 8, or 11 from the sun.
Yes. So when you hear mediocre yoga, you don't feel so good, but you could have the worst yoga, so it's not so bad.
Yes. And also we have to like go over all these systematically. We're not going to do that now. I'm just touching on some of them, right? And then see how they line up, like how they pile up, and this kind of thing.
Interesting. So for all these yogas, you look at the yoga judgment.
Yes, definitely. You can also see it in his the growing of his wealth. Like the yogas are definitely important. So you can see that his yogas are strong, his planets are strong, the dignities are strong, the Lagitarya Vasas are strong. If you do the Jaimini analysis, like the power, it will show strong. If you look at Tararkamsha, it's strong. You know, it's all strong. So it's also there's also some problems. Of course, like in any horoscope. So there's the losses like here are especially relating to Rahu and Venus and so on. So, and you can see this play out in the chart also. There's also this yoga called, you know, when we consider the moon and the sun, they should be in different halves of, you know, it's called the waxing and waning, being in the visible and invisible part of the chart. Like when here, this is a night bird because the sun is below or between the 1st and the 7th house cusps, you see. So it's a night bird, and the moon is between, you know, the 7th and the 1st house cusp as well, but it's in the visible part of the horoscope, right? This is daytime, this is nighttime. And so when both are divided between those two, and especially when it's a waxing moon and it's daytime, a daytime birth, it's going to create some powerful yoga as well. Here he has a waning moon, and he was born during nighttime, so then you know, it would indicate some decrease, right? A waning moon is always indicating decreasing wealth, but in this case, you know, moon is exalted, of course. So, I mean, there's like, he doesn't have all these yogas. If you look at maybe 15, 16 yogas.
And also there is that Jaimini combination, like the 2nd from the ascendant has more planets than the 12th, right?
Yes, there's so many things we can consider, but it's not, he has some of the yogas playing out, and it's more important to look at also the strength of the yogas, of course.
Yes,
and also
that's what I was going to ask you. Is it more important to have like many yogas or maybe less yogas but good quality?
Yes, it depends on I think it's the power of the yogas seem to be very important, of course, the strength of the yogas, and also you have to look at the whole chart. Okay, you have to work on a chart, like it's not done within an hour or something.
Yes,
you can just go into it. There's so many things to consider, but I think if you do like a thorough analysis, you look at the Jaimini Raja yogas, you look at the Parashara yogas, you know, also, I mean, like the strength, considering the strength of the planets and yogas that are being formed, and you overlap, I mean, you pile that up and you look at the whole picture, then you can have a very clear picture of what is our understanding of the potential. Also, you have to look at the context. Some people are born rich, but then they have difficulties themselves to you know, maintain that level of wealth, for example, when they start working on their own and this kind of thing.
Yes.
So it depends on the context, of course, but I think definitely the strength of the yogas and Jaimini Raja yogas and the Jaimini wealth indicators and success and this kind of thing is going to be very, very important. I mean, that's my experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how is it, you think it's also working for you?
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, for me, I look at the Jaimini yogas first, and then I look at the other Parashara yogas and at the yoga judgment, of course. So I don't personally memorize all the yogas, but it's good to have like a list and go through them.
Yes, I'm also looking at a list here, by the way, you know. I also look at the core yogas. You know, the things that can give some wealth, and then the dignity, and then also the prominence, you know, what planet, also because Mars here, for example, is his Amatyakaraka, right, which relates to, it's the minister, right, which relates
into career as well.
Career and friends and this kind of thing. And so it's important here. And when he started the Mars Dasha, it's all relating to real estate and vacation, you know, houses and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So which is also connected to Venus and so on. So yeah.
Maybe
also, if we could,
maybe we can look at some events like to see how they line up, if you want.
Like, well, just I think we should. I mentioned like the beginning of 1979, 97. Excuse me. We had this whole Mars thing being triggered. Also, if you look at the Navamsha, in what is it here, 79? It was in the Aries Navamsha, which has this Karaka, of course. It was all about real estate, buying a first piece of land, put a house on it, and sell it. This started all in that period. And then 84. It was the end of the Mars Ketu Dasha. This was happening. So Mars Ketu, Ketu, of course, is important in terms of real estate. It's aspected by Mars from its own sign, and then Jupiter exalted is going to manifest it, of course. There's some separation from the sun, but here, you know, it's again a good dignified sun, which is aspecting the 10th. So it took off from there. See, it's really clear. It's also, Ketu is in the 10th house. It's strongly manifested in the Hora chart. It's also conjunct the 10th cusp. It's aspected by debilitated Jupiter, so it's not really going to help. And Mars here is, what is it doing here? I'm just going to pull up.
Did he have like major setbacks, or did he have like a consistent run since 84 or something?
He had setbacks as well, of course. You know, of course he had setbacks, but I'm not really, I don't want to go into the timings here because I haven't really put them, I don't have them here. Like, I just wanted to generally touch on it.
Curious. I was just curious if he had like a consistent, or did he have ups and downs, you know?
Yeah, I think we save that for the class, you know?
Okay.
And just here you see the Hora chart. So like in Mars Ketu, for example, if you look at the Hora chart here, what is happening? So Mars is, it's in an enemy's dignity, right? It's in an adult state. It's aspected by Ketu, and it's manifested by Venus here, which is aspecting its own sign. So it's going to manifest that Mars. So something happened in the beginning of the Mars Dasha.
Mm.
See? And of course, it's Yamatya Karaka, which is
11th
important in the Hora chart.
Yeah.
See? Because it's the important Jaimini Charakaraka to consider in the Hora. So we had Mars going on. So something happened. It got manifested. But also Rahu and Ketu are aspecting. So it didn't... there was a lot of confusion, of course, and a lot of growing into it because being unexperienced, right? And so, but it's this is what happened. So Mars was able to manifest something as the Amatya Karaka, which is important in the Hora chart. So, and this is also a real estate, and so something happened, and something manifested. We could see this, and then in the Mars Ketu Dasha, Ketu is aspected by Jupiter, who's considered a manifestor, but it's debilitated, so it's not going to help. It's aspected by Mars, so to put in a lot of work in it. Then you look at the dispositor, the ruler of Ketu is the Sun, and the Sun is also in a great friend sign, which is an aspect manifested by an exalted moon here. Well, it's a Mula Trikona moon. So there's also an aspect from Venus, which is always a soothing influence, and also Rahu again here. But the thing is that the important thing is that things are changing. There was a breakthrough in terms of becoming more resourceful and to build his business. And Mars and Ketu, of course, relate to real estate, as I mentioned.
Yeah, I see. Even judging generally, I see this is like a very tough person because all the benefics are with the malefic. There is no like isolated benefic in his chart, in his Rashi chart, So he's got this tough quality always,
Definitely tough and business, yeah.
And also, all the embodied planets are in 5 signs. So they have the like Jupiterian quality, Jupiter, the Karaka for wealth as well. But it's also ups and downs, like, it's averted.
Also, if you look generally speaking at his Hora chart, like you see that the second cusp lord is important, of course, which is Saturn, which is on the ascendant. The dignity is okay. It's in a Kumara state, so in a huge state. It can manifest, sleepy. So it's a good Saturn, a good second cusp lord. There's a debilitated Jupiter on the second cusp, which is not really going to help it. But also we have an exalted moon aspecting, which is waning.
Malefic.
So, but it's Mula Trikona moon, but it's fine. It's not going to damage it. That's
it's not going to damage it, but it's like still more by taking, right? It's not by giving.
Exactly. Then also the second from the second is an important cusp to consider. Is the third. So we have Ketu here, Jupiter aspecting, Mars aspecting the Lord, is in a good dignity, all right? And it's aspected by, again, Mula Trikona moon, which is manifesting this third cusp Lord here. So that's kind of good. And of course, we look at the moon itself, which is the Karaka for the Hora chart, which is a Mula Trikona sign, aspected by these planets like the sun. But it's really good. Also, the second from the moon, of course, has Mercury in its own house and awake, of course, on account of being in its own sign, aspected by Saturn. So here we have this, here we see that there's going to be some delays, some struggle, right? Some separation in respect to finances, which is definitely, this is an, up and down going, the whole, gaining wealth, being resourceful has been a great struggle, of course, but it's always been growing. He's very successful in all his endeavors, especially if you look at like the Jupiter Dasha and the yoga strength of Jupiter, and you can see like Jupiter being very strong also.
Yeah.
Even though it's debilitated, but Jupiter is using the Chaturthamsa, debilitated planets become powerful, right? So this was a lot of gains in the Jupiter Dasha, even though it's debilitated in a Hora chart. So it's kind of would be very interesting to go into that.
So many factors point like to a person that worked really hard, like didn't have like a comfortable life. He really worked hard.
Yes, and also the Nichabanga Yoga is Saturn is involved, right? So it's also the second cusp lord. So it's Saturn that is going to be kind of fueled because of the suffering of the Jupiter here.
Yes, exactly.
And so, and it's on the ascendant, and it rules the second cusp, and it's manifested also. So yeah, a lot of this guy doesn't go to sleep when something goes wrong. You know, he just stands up and just fights for it. But if you look at the overall Hora indications, like the second cusp, the second from the second, which is a third, then the moon, the second from the moon is very strong. Even the third from the moon is the moon, which is in Mulattikuna sign. It has the sun in it, in good dignity, manifested. So if you add it up, it's much more positive than negative. See, so that person is definitely going to be resourceful, and it has to be, right? Because he didn't come from a rich family.
Exactly.
On the contrary, he
Can we
built
look
everything.
at the D12? I'm curious about the ancestry.
Sure. So, yes. So in the D12, we have to obviously look at Rahu and Ketu. They're on the 12th, 6th axis here. Ketu is with the sun. We can look at, he had a quite good relationship with his parents.
Well, Moon with Jupiter would be a wealth combination, so maybe further down the line he had like in his DNA some ability to have wealth, like in business, because it's the sign of Gemini. So maybe not his parents, but 7 generations before. Yeah.
Yes.
And this leadership quality, like Sun in Leo, because even in his Rashi chart, like people who have, the sign of Cancer in Leo with good planets, they tend to be important, because these are the luminary signs. So they are the king and queen.
Definitely. Interesting. Yes. So the 12th lord here is Venus in Navamsha.
Well, yeah, in Aries. Yeah, but if you didn't like rectify, maybe we shouldn't look at the cusps.
Yes, we can look at some other stuff.
Yes, let's look at some other things.
Yes. What do we have here? Well, let's look at the Chaturthamsa chart and see how that plays out. So of course, an important planet is going to be Mercury, the fourth cusp, the fourth from the fourth, which is the 7th, which relates to trade, of course. The fourth cusp has Venus on it and Rahu. Okay, so the fourth cusp lord is Saturn. The Saturn is in the 10th house, which is always manifesting in a friend's dignity and in an adult state. So that's a good fourth cusp lord, which is important, of course.
Yes, career from real estate.
Yes, also the fourth cusp is manifested by Jupiter. Venus is there and Mars is also aspecting. So whenever you have Venus and Mars, it's always indicating passion to take care of that fourth house cusp, which is ruled by a planet that is in the 10th and in an adult state, and so on. And it's manifested again by a very nice Mercury. So, I mean, that's very strong already.
Yes. And also, looking at the Chaturthamsa, I see that his soul planet Jupiter is in Taurus, which is like geared towards material stability. And it's with Rahu. And, in Nadi astrology, there's this yoga, Jupiter with Rahu gives real estate success. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, also it's manifested, right?
Yes.
The stuff here.
By Mercury.
Then also the 7th cusp is of course has this great Mercury.
Yes.
Manifesting it. Again, we have Saturn separating. There have always been delays, and there always been some. there has always been separation at times, losses, and so on.
Of course.
Yes.
But he managed to go through them because he has good Saturn Navamsha, so he wasn't stuck on a loss, I guess.
Definitely not. Okay. But in terms of his wealth, and of course, at a certain point, they become so, wealthy that losing some is not a big deal, right? So, but it's going to be indicating the fluctuations are definitely indicated in the dashas also,
Yes.
which is very interesting to look at. And you see that Rahu, Venus, and Saturn are the troublemakers there, and you can see it happening in the Hora chart, right?
Yes.
And also in the Chaturthamsa chart, which again here has this separation to the 7th cusp, for example. But at the same time, the 4th cusp is always manifested by Mercury. So it has like this interesting dynamic going on in respect to the dashas. See, also, of course, Mercury is the important planet in the Chaturthamsa. It's in its own sign, right? It's manifesting all this. But then the 4th from Mercury has Saturn in it, which is again a separator. The lord of that, the dispositor of that, is Jupiter, which is good. It's in a great friend sign. It has Mercury aspecting, also Rahu a bit. So if we look at the dispositors, we can see some instabilities or maybe some challenging things. But overall, if you look at the important 4th, 7th, Mercury as the Karaka and so on, we see there's a very good foundation for acquiring wealth, or getting one's more than a fair share in life. And if you consider then, the yogas and the avastas, and it's powerful.
Yes, and he was lucky. I mean, he was running the right dashas, because if he had started in Saturn dash, I don't know.
Would have been a different story, but
exactly.
Saturn as the 9th, it's of course it is creating this yoga also, right? And it is manifested by a Mercury, and Mercury is also manifesting it here. And also in the Hora chart, there is some manifestation to Saturn, of course, but as the Mahadasha Lord, creating this yoga and looking at the yoga judgment screen.
But I was worried about Saturn because it's on the body and it's
yes. But he's going to be near 80 then, so there would be some health issues arising, coming up. Yes, I mean it's also yoga, right? It's Ashubha.
Yes,
on the ascendant.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So it's also rules the 8th cusp here.
Yes.
So the 9th and the 10th, but so we should look at some other factors here, like Navamsha chart and this kind of thing. But maybe we should keep it, I don't know. You want to look at like health and this kind of thing, or just keep it wealth?
I'm curious. Health is wealth, so let's look at the health.
You're right. Okay. Let's look at it.
It's my Virgo. It's like health.
Let's look at Trimsamsha. I've looked at it. It's exalted here.
Oh, Jupiter is good. So
it's like a perfect Saturn. It has some, it has some malefic influence.
He's got a good Trimsamsha as well.
Yeah, he's a lucky guy.
Yeah.
He has the node aspecting and also Mars, yes, and also the Sun a bit, but it's really doing really well.
And Jupiter in Pisces helps him heal, and Mercury helps him make the right decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Also, even like the 6th cusp board is the Sun.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's in the 11th, so it's not like an ideal placement. But
I think, yeah,
I'm not sure about the time here, so
yeah, but I think
it's just kind of speculating.
So the Sun is the worst dignity because it's neutral. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's with a malefic, so maybe accidents to the shanks or the lower knee or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, here Saturn is exalted. It's on in Libra, which is the internal parts of the genitals, right? So maybe some prostate or something around that area. Could be some something to look at and so on. So, but I mean, generally speaking, it's
and Rahu and Ketu in Leo.
in Leo, which is the heart. Well, it's the
All
vital
the
organs.
yes,
Yeah.
all the vital organs there.
He's running Jupiter, Rahu right now. Here.
Is he having any health issues?
No, he's doing pretty well actually. Jupiter is strong in its own sign here. You know, it's also, it has a Venus aspecting, Mercury aspecting.
Yeah.
Mercury is always good in terms of healing.
Exactly.
And Moon, of course, we have Moon, Mercury. So no, everything goes really well. Rahu, of course, relates to stress. I mean, he experiences stress, solar plexus area. And as you say, the Lord is quite, it's neutral. He's doing well. He's doing
He's
fine.
doing well, I guess, like with all the good dignities in the Rashi and everywhere, like he has a pretty enviable chart, I would say.
Yes, it's a success, a lot of success indicated, and totally focused on creating wealth and being resourceful. That's definitely, and if you meet him, you feel that he has some inspirational quality, you know. He's like this passionate individual. He's 75 years old now or something, so because and still it's like going really strong and
he has the sun with his Atma Karaka, so he has also the motivational quality, inspiration, right?
Yes, and it's also a player. Like it's for him, it's all a game. It's playing the game of life, which is also indicated by a good Chaturthamsa chart, right? Playing the game, which is also Mercury is important here. Being good at playing the game of life, and of course this great Mercury here in the ascendant, and forming also this inspirational yoga with Saturn, and so on. Looking at the power of these planets, he's definitely done a great job, and is doing a great job at that. So, but you see that the Saturn dasha, of course, is going to become older, near 80. So it's going to slow down. It's going to make him slow down a little bit, and it's going to also he'll have to take care of his health.
Old age
also.
Is the natural Saturn age, so that overlaps as well. I think retirement and all that.
So if you look at the Kavadamsha, auspicious and inauspicious events, and the Saturn dasha is a little, staying to it, because Saturn is debilitated. It's also separated by the Sun here, and Rahu is aspecting. So it's in the fourth, so it has some kind of stability, we could say, but there's some affliction to it. So from that chart, so it's important to look at all these things in terms of its purpose. Saturn is in the third. It's aspected by Mercury. So there's a lot of Mercury blessings onto Saturn because of this conjunction here as well.
Exalted Mercury aspecting.
It's also this very, very powerful chart, like being focused on the path. Like you see.
I mean, the debilitated Sun is the only down.
Yes.
But maybe there is this yoga that hasn't been uncovered yet, and maybe the debilitated Sun is good in the Ashkavedamsha, and we don't know yet.
Well, if you apply the Tattwa technique, it's very interesting to see how it plays out, because whenever a planet is exalted or debilitated in the Rashi chart, it's going to be exalted or debilitated in the Hora chart. So yeah, it's interesting to see how that plays out. I think Ernst is still working on it, on perfecting that technique. But looking at it and applying it on the charts I have, it's really remarkable how it can change things. Yes. So I think it's also because in the Hora chart, I mean, the dignities are all good except for Mars, right? Because when you look at the Arkamsha, the debilitated planet is going to create success, increase.
Yes.
It's only Mars which is creating some problems because it's in an enemy's Rashi, enemy's dignity. And in this analysis, it's the enemy dignities, or the great enemy, or even neutral is going to it's going to be neutral. It's not going to increase anything. But like an enemy, great enemy sign, are going to decrease wealth.
What Charakaraka is Mars?
Amatya Karaka.
Amatya, so his advisor,
So,
friends, or maybe his career is going to be, yeah, I guess it's just, you know, I mean,
actually,
you win some,
he's
you
going to
lose
run.
some.
Excuse me?
I guess it's you win some, you lose some.
Yes, I think he's going to lose some, like he's running, what is it here?
Aries?
In
Aries,
Tattwa.
Cancer? No, Aries, Gemini.
Yes, he's running Aries, Gemini. It's whenever Scorpio, like in the Hora chart, for example, whenever Scorpio hits or something, or Libra, then there's going to be some decrease of wealth. See, because it's going to be the Lord that's going, or Aries.
Yeah.
See, that would indicate, and that's the only periods that it would indicate some
maybe
substantial loss
on his health or on his employees or something. 6th house.
Yes, it could.
Or litigation, or who knows, enemies.
We could go deeper into this. I think we just gave a good overall indication. Yeah, but it's quite clear that looking at the important points like yogas, combinations, and Hora, D4 chart, and so on, that you know, this person is very capable of creating a nice wealth,
comfortable,
nice life for
not so
himself.
comfortable, but wealthy.
Yes.
Yes, I think that's enough for today, maybe. Or if you want to say more things, or do you want to?
No. I feel I'm repeating already. So no, I think we went over it. I think we should keep it for for the class. Yeah.
Okay,
cool.
So again, I'm gonna mention that we're gonna be sharing the information on how to look at the chart for a financial wealth perspective in a more systematic way, like with a presentation. On Sundays, I will be going through yogas that are not reflected in this chart and other things that are not reflected in this chart but are reflected in other charts. So we'll also be looking at the participants, some of the participants' charts as examples to see how it panned out with the dashas, their wealth factors. So I think it's going to be interesting. So it would be nice if you join us this Sunday at 6 p.m. Central European Time. That's like France, Germany, Belgium. You can check on timeanddate.com to see what time it is for you. And if you can't join, you can get the recording afterwards. So I think that's about it for today. Thank you, Levi, for being here and sharing this example with us.
Thank you. Yes, I think we'll have fun on Sunday.
Yes.
Going over a little deeper.
Because, we are geeky that way, and we are having fun looking at charts. And if you're watching this, so are you. Okay, so.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. I'll catch you later.